Hi, I'm Metta Spencer, and you've reached the World Repair Shop. And we are having these live broadcasts now for people who are working on saving the world from any one of 6 global threats: war and weapons or militarism, global warming, famine, pandemics, radioactive contamination, or cyber risks. And today we're going to be talking about a near war or a real war that's taking place in the Far East, involving India and some of its not very friendly neighbors. And my dear friend Subir Guin is going to tell me about this because he is a Canadian who was born in India and stays in touch with people in India. Good morning, Subir.
Good morning, Metta.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, and I hope you're well.
Yes, we're all doing fine in this COVID era. Super.
Great.
All right, so let's get busy and talk about what's going on in Kashmir and in that region. So bring us up to date. Hello, Adam. It's nice to see Adam Wynn on our program, the World Repair Shop. As well, Adam is my assistant, and he'll be looking out for people who are trying to contact us by YouTube with questions.
Is this unlisted or listed today?
It's unlisted, and we are en route right now. We're live, and Subir is about to tell us about what's been going on in India, northern part of India.
Metta, just a heads up, if the video is unlisted, people will not be able to comment.
It is unlisted, so don't worry about it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, well, let's start with Kashmir. Kashmir is one of the states that has recently been embraced into what they call the Union territories. It was, before that, it was under special status, and they had a certain degree of autonomy, which has now been removed. It is the only province in India where the Muslims are a majority. Kashmir. And Jammu is part of what is known as J&K, Jammu and Kashmir. And J&K is predominantly Hindu. Kashmiri Brahmins are the majority in that population. And Jawaharlal Nehru was...
Let me ask you, get clear. There's Kashmir, and then there's another territory right by it called Jammu.
That's right.
And
it's part of...
is mostly Hindu, and Kashmir is mostly Muslim, but
Correct.
They are territorially integrated, and
that's right.
The whole package is called J&K.
Exactly, exactly. And there was always a good relation between the Hindus and Muslims. There was no problem earlier on, but then now what has happened is Kashmir has been flooded with the military who were there ostensibly to stop the infiltration of Pakistani terrorists who were coming across the border, because Pakistan feels that by virtue of its Muslim majority, Kashmir should be part of Pakistan.
How did it turn out? How did it get set up that way in the first place? When India divided into India and Pakistan, then the territories were assigned, the border was set up, and so on. Is that when it all happened?
Yes, it happened in 46, 47. The independence actually was gained in 47. But before that, the Maharaja of Kashmir, he decided that he would opt to join India because of the people who were coming across the border from what is now Pakistan, or what was then not quite Pakistan, because Pakistan was established also in 47. So when India was divided. And so India promised to help the Kashmiris, and it was given the semi-autonomous status. They had a degree of independence of their own, but they were part of India. Now, what has happened is that when the matter went to...
If I keep interrupting you, because I really want to make sure I know what I'm what I'm learning here now. So it was the decision of the Maharaja and not the Brits and not anybody else in India
That's right.
that decided whether Jammu or just Kashmir
No, Jammu and Kashmir. There was still,
was already
it was already integrated. Yeah.
already integrated. Okay. It was really up to the Maharaja to decide which side he was going to join. Is that right?
That's right. Because, you know, there were a lot of independent states throughout India that were ruled by the Maharajas, and they were given the option of joining the country. And of course, you know, to be honest, you know, Indian government, the Nehru family and the other cabinet ministers realized that, you know, you cannot have states run by Maharajas who were mostly feudalistic in a country that planned to be a secular democracy. And so eventually they were all, I think the last state that was integrated into India was Hyderabad, because the Maharaja of Hyderabad, the Nizam of Hyderabad, was holding off. He didn't want to, he wanted to remain independent. But eventually, you know, that even Hyderabad became part of India. So Jammu and Kashmir.
So on the day when India became independent, I've had the idea it was one big moment. But are you saying that different pieces came together at different times, and that maybe the Hyderabad didn't join when the rest of India became independent, or what was the situation in 1947?
That's right. It was not totally integrated at the time, and there were a few Maharajas who were maybe a little concerned about what their status would be, but most of them joined, and Hyderabad was the last to join, to become part of India.
Okay.
Now, what has happened in the recent, you know, since 1964, was the Chinese were at the border between China and India, and they started claiming that these territories belong to them. So there was a dispute. And the line of control, which divides Pakistan, what is known as Azad Kashmir, which is the part of Kashmir which is now part of Pakistani territory, and the Indian side, which is part of J&K, that line of control is a pretty straight line if you look on the map. But what the Chinese established with the cooperation of India was what they call a line of actual control, LAC, which is different. And that line keeps moving because the Chinese believe that the Galwan River Valley is part of China, and India disputes that.
Now
that dispute is going on.
Just a second. Now this valley, it'd be nice if we could find a map, maybe. I don't know.
It's hard to find a detailed map. It's hard to find a great detailed map of that area, but you will find them. There's some that.
Okay. Well, now where is this valley? Is it in Kashmir or?
It's in the northeast part of Kashmir.
Northeast part of Kashmir, and this is the part that is
in dispute.
Being claimed by China or not?
That's right. They've been sending forces. The forces have now been deeply entrenched in that valley. Actually, I have been trying to get some latest news because of recent events in India, unrelated to Kashmir. Nobody's talking about where the Chinese are right now. I haven't heard anything. It's been totally silenced. And for a while, if you remember, Mr. Modi said at the height of the crisis, when 20 Indian soldiers were killed, what happened was there was a dispute, and because of a prearranged agreement that no firearms would be used, there was a hand-to-hand combat, and some of the soldiers were tossed down the valley and fell into the river and died of hypothermia. And nobody knows how many soldiers on the Chinese side were killed. But anyway, after that crisis, things cooled off a little bit.
Now, hold
But
on. This was actually just a 2-3
a
months.
few months ago. That's right.
Uh-huh.
I believe it was March or April. And
Now
what
we're getting out of order in terms of history. Let's back up and do this in some sort of historical sequence, because I want to disentangle the Kashmir, Pakistan, India dispute from the China-India dispute. Can you disentangle those? Or are they connected in some way?
No, it should be disentangled because the Chinese border problem is somewhat different, although it does involve Kashmir.
Okay, now
And
let's talk about the history of the relationship between India and Pakistan vis-a-vis Kashmir, and then turn to the China thing. Okay,
all right.
bring us
Well,
all the way from 1947 up to the present in Kashmir.
well, in 1947, because of the dispute, there was an agreement that there was going to be a plebiscite
Mhm.
to invite Chinese to the Kashmiris to decide whether they would stay on India's side or whether the whole territory would go over to Pakistan. And because of recent the militarization with the Indian army almost flooding the territory of Kashmir, the local residents have been becoming quite hostile towards India. At first, they were willing to side with India. They didn't want to go to Pakistan. So now there's a possibility they might prefer to be either independent of both India and Pakistan, because I don't see the likelihood of their, eagerness to join India after the way the Indian troops have been sent out there.
Right.
And what they're doing is they're there not just to stop the infiltration of terrorists across the line of control, but also they are oppressing the local people. They're not letting them get out of their houses. And the lockdown has proven to be another excuse for the Indian government to mistreat the people of Kashmir because of their religion. And that is
would the idea of total independence be an option? I mean, that's the first time I've heard anybody say that this might be something the Kashmiris would prefer. And if it were, would that include the Hindus in Jammu?
Well, if Kashmir decides to be independent, I cannot predict, but I would say, I would believe that the people of Jammu would prefer to stay within India and let Kashmir go be independent if they choose to, and if they can win that decision, if there is a plebiscite. But
is there any realistic prospect of that? Frankly, that's the first time I've heard of anybody saying that the idea of independence was one of the possibilities. Probably isn't going to put, if there hasn't been a plebiscite so far, why would there be one now?
Exactly. And, well, that is the point, and this is why it is extremely difficult to predict what it would happen. But it certainly is, theoretically at least, it is an option. And there's independent states that are also landlocked, like Bhutan, for instance, which is just east of Nepal. That's an independent kingdom, and they are not. Sikkim used to be an independent kingdom, but that also was integrated into the Indian Union. So now the point is, going back to the Kashmir, sort of the dispute between India and China, the border dispute. When Modi was asked, "What is the position of what's happening?" and he said, "Oh, the Chinese have not transgressed into Indian territory." He denied it, which is mysterious because everybody else knows that they did cross the line. And yet, why did the Prime Minister of India choose to deny it?
Now, hold on, because now as I recall, back in the 60s, there was a war between India and China briefly in that
That's right.
same region or something.
Yeah.
So this is
yeah.
war number 2, sort of, or at least.
They invaded.
Hmm?
They invaded India, and India was totally unprepared, because I remember I knew some army officers who were telling me that didn't have enough winter clothing to protect themselves against the elements. This happened in Assam. And when some of these Indian officers used their binoculars and looked over the horizon, looked across the hills, they saw these hundreds and hundreds of Chinese marching towards India. And some of them fled because they knew there was no way they could stop them. And if the Chinese wanted to, they could have moved deeper into India. But I think my understanding is that they chose to embarrass India and show that they were more powerful, and they retreated on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a very serious problem. And the belief is that Nehru was totally shocked, because we had very good relations with China until that time. And so
That was about 67 or so?
No, it was earlier than that. It was 62, I believe. I'm not good at dates myself, but,
All
but
right.
anyway, you can look that up. It was in it was mid 60s. It happened.
Okay, so, but now, are we talking about the same? It sounds as if we're talking about 2 different patches of land. That if they marched into or came close to Assam the first time, now that's not anywhere near where they're encroaching into India.
It is now a little further west, because that whole border because Tibet, of course, is now part of China. And again, the Indian Prime Minister, he acknowledged that Tibet was part of China, which I don't know why he did that. Because that was, anyway, the Chinese seized and colonized Tibet, and now it's part of China, recognized as part of China. And so that whole border between Tibet, what is now China, and India is somewhat fluid on the northeastern side. And I was mentioning the Galwan Valley, which is where the latest incident took place. That is still disputed and has not been settled.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but had it been disputed all along, or was it just like a frozen conflict that people,
Well,
we didn't hear about it until this summer.
The thing is that it's when the Chinese started challenging the Indian forces and the fight broke out, that's when it became, it sort of became the headline topic in the newspapers, and people were getting worried and said, this is another war with China. It has not been settled yet. And somehow the media has been kept out of it, or at least the population knows nothing about it. And
what's the relationship between China and Pakistan? And does it have anything to do with this dispute? I mean, these 3 countries seem to be jiggling around trying to find alliances and enemies. What's the situation there?
Well, I can sum it up very well in a quote from a Chinese diplomat who said, he told, because somebody asked him, he said, why are you supporting Pakistan? He asked this Chinese diplomat. And he said, because Pakistan is our Israel.
Meaning, like to the U.S., Israel is like a foothold in the Middle East.
That's right.
We use it, being the U.S., use it to establish a base, so to speak.
That's right. Not only that, the whole basis of the friendship with Pakistan was because Pakistan was against India, and China has been opposed to India politically. And yet, with all this, there's still continuing trade between India and China, which is real difficult to explain how that happens.
Okay, why is there any inevitability about the enmity between China and India? Is there any are there issues of particular interests that have to be resolved, or is this just some sort of historic family feud?
I don't think there's any family feud, but ideologically there may be some differences, but that too is resolvable. However, my fear is that until this border dispute is settled amicably, there's going to be some feelings of suspicion and I wouldn't say hostility, but we can't have normal relations as we did prior to 1947 during the Nehru administration.
Their administration got along all right with China.
That's right.
That was still Mao's days, wasn't it?
That's right.
Mao and Nehru got along. I didn't know that. All right. But then it went sour. About what? What really tipped it over?
Well, it's the border issue, and the thing is that China keeps encroaching into Indian territory. But the Indians have also, from what I know, the Indians have also been not quite as clean as they make out to be, because there are parts of the Northeast which were seized by the governor of Assam many years ago. And, to this day, most Indians are not even aware of this. However, I would suggest that we go to something more topical right now, which is the major protest that has been organized by the farmers against the current administration. And that is because the new laws that have been passed are somewhat complex, but essentially they are trying to establish industrial agriculture, like a collective farm, very large farms, as a result of which the small farmers will be thrown out the business. They won't be able to keep their own farms. They'll be absorbed by these big multinational companies. And there are very big companies who are eager to do this. And the farmers are going to be left out of the picture. And that's the reason why there's been a spontaneous uprising. The government did not want them to enter Delhi, but they have already come in, some of them, the farmers from Punjab and Haryana.
Yes, I've heard that there are like many thousands of people. Are they on the march, or what are they doing?
Well, they're coming in from all parts of India, but the Punjab and Haryana farmers some of them have already entered Delhi, and they're sitting put, and they have already declared that if until we get some action from the government, we're not going to move. And so they're sitting there. They're well provisioned. They're getting a lot of support from the gurdwaras, the Sikh places of worship, because they've got a tradition of having and feeding people, and so they've got their water trucks, they've got food supplies, and they're not moving. And this is the first time I have seen of a group that has not been attacked by RSS goons. I call them goons because they're really ruffians. These are people who are members of the RSS, which is the political party, and the BJP, which is the ruling party, is a direct, how can I put it? It is part of the RSS group. the
Mhm.
RSS, and Narendra Modi has been a lifetime member of RSS since he entered politics in Gujarat when he was the premier of Gujarat. So what has happened is this time they're refusing to move. They think it's an important piece of legislation that has to be reversed. Otherwise, there's going to be serious problems.
Well, I'm a little shocked that Modi would undertake something that I think agricultural experts now agree is a bad idea. I mean, the people I talk to now say that for all kinds of reasons, that industrial agriculture has no future and is bad for the environment, bad for climate, and bad for food production. So I wouldn't be in a position to actually cite chapter and verse about research on this, but I I don't think that many people who really know something about the economics of agriculture or the food production system would agree that it would be a good thing to turn over large tracts of land to multinationals or to farmers who want to produce for multinational production. Um,
You're quite right.
am I mistaken in that regard?
No, I think you're quite right, Mera. And the problem is that when I'm talking about, it's really not multinational. There's certain very big players in India, like the Ambani brothers. There's Mukesh and Anil, the Ambanis, and they're multi-billionaires. They're the people who are now involved in buying up part of the Indian railways, which is even more ludicrous because the railway system in India is pretty wide. It covers all parts of the subcontinent.
And good.
And,
I mean,
and it's,
that's one thing they've done well, I think, is
it's
run
been
the railways.
Exactly. And now to privatize it is a horrendous idea, but Modi's going ahead with it. And the people who are taking over, their interest is profit. And the point is that when they do that, the people who suffer are the people who use the railways, which are mostly, the people on the middle class and what they call the lower castes, who are also being oppressed. The other thing to note is that the Dalits, who are formerly known as the untouchables, and Mahatma Gandhi called them the Harijans. And now these Harijans are the outcasts. They joined the BJP because when they had no idea of Modi, they did not know what Modi would do when he became prime minister. So they joined, but now they're realizing the folly, and now some of them are realizing they're leaving the party.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a very interesting man by the name of Kanhaiya Kumar, who is a Dalit. He has a PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru University in Delhi. And I heard him speak to his audiences, and he speaks, he uses a lot of English phrases, but he speaks what people generally call Hinglish, which is an amalgam of Hindi and English. And but he is very earnest, and he is very clear. He doesn't sound like a politician, but he's trying to teach.
Sorry, he's a Dalit himself?
He's a Dalit, and he tries to teach people in the audience what's really going on and telling them, informing them of the facts. He's not trying to, encourage them to join a party, because he's a non-partisan individual himself. And he's a very promising future leader in my estimation. And that's why I fear for his life, because they say, even people in India are saying that, people like that have been assassinated.
Oh, yeah.
And there have been 14 well-known journalists who have been assassinated since Modi came to power.
God. Sounds, yeah. We
It's pretty
complain about-
bad. It's
we
pretty
complain
bad.
about Trump, but at least Trump is not assassinating his enemies so
No.
far.
See, the thing
it's-
is, Modi is a very wily man, and he is very calculating. All the major universities have lost their vice chancellors. You know, Amartya Sen, who was I believe he was the vice chancellor of the Banaras Hindu University, he was fired and replaced by a political stalwart of the BJP. And this is the way he's systematically changing the country in ways that are quite alarming.
Well, this is all very distressing, but it is a good overview of a very troubling situation. And I'm glad that you keep so closely in touch with what's going on there. We'll want additional postings from you, briefings from you in the future. But I think we're going to end this for today. And thank you so much, Subir.
Thank you. It's an ongoing problem, but it's changing from day to day. That's for sure.